how I choose and how we choose our markets is based on what you said earlier in your question, and that is job diversity and how no one employer makes up more than 25% of jobs in a market. Dallas-Fort Worth, it's 14% is a leading industry according to the census, census.gov. And Nevada, flip that. Nevada is, I want to say 28% for hospitality.
Yeah, because the casinos and stuff.
Casinos and stuff, exactly. So that is the primary thing I look at is job diversity, because when one employer, one industry goes away, I want the rest of the economy to be able to pick up the slack. In addition, I look at the supply and demand, want to make sure that the absorption rate, so that's factoring in the amount of new builds plus current inventory and looking at how many potential renters there are juxtaposed to that. I want to make sure that's healthy. And lastly, or not lastly, but I'd say the third primary thing I look for is just the overall growth in the population and the population trend. So I want to make sure people can afford to pay the rent, so they have jobs and there's job diversity. People are coming there and will continue to come there. There's not a mass exodus. And then there's healthy supply and demand. Those are the three primary things we look for, but there's about 7 or 8 other things.
Yep.
When you look for a market, what do you look for? And I know there's overlap, but anything in particular that I didn't mention?
Yeah, so I guess this is more for my smaller for the smaller properties. But I mean, honestly, right now, what I looked at was it's this closeness to Oakley and Hyde Park, which is, people aren't going to understand what that means. They're not from Cincinnati, but they're two really nice areas in Cincinnati that are they're building a ton of apartments in, and the rents are insanely high. And my assumption is that the locations on the outskirts are going to be the new Oakley 5-10 years from now. And it's not kind of go in there and look at the rents and the property values and see how those are trending with time, and if they kind of, I guess, meet my assumptions, then I'll invest there. That's how I picked Pleasant Ridge.
You nailed Pleasant Ridge, by the way. I didn't mention this, but Colleen and I went to the new Mexican restaurant in Pleasant Ridge.
I can't remember what it's called.
Casa Fuego, I think.
Is it good?
Amazing. Okay, amazing house margaritas. And your area is going to get the spillover from the uppity up areas that are directly next to it.
I'd say maybe one other thing just to mention is I subscribe to my friend subscribes to like the business courier here, so I'm not sure if every city or state has that. But I know like Dallas has one. I know they have one up in Dayton and Columbus. But I'll read that and just kind of see where are they building new development at, because it'll come out like a year before they even. I mean, the entire project is tracked, and they are first talking to city council and when the plans are being created, and then when they're going to start and when it's done. And so you got to see, I think a couple of years ago they mentioned how they're going to start building all these new restaurants in, I guess they call it downtown Pleasant Ridge. And so that was, I remember kind of in the back of my mind, I remember reading that like a year ago, and so you can kind of use that to like get ahead of the game too. It's like, oh, well, they're building something in 2 years over here, and so in 2 years from now, people are probably going to be willing to invest there, or maybe they're going to be selling, or something will happen there. So maybe if I get there ahead of time, I can maybe catch that appreciation curve. Not basing my decision solely on that, but just that's the added advantage of getting in somewhere early. So
smart.
Just kind of reading up on the area too.
Yeah, I like that. And that's similar to what Barbara Corcoran said whenever I interviewed her on the show, how she was looking for the up-and-coming areas, and she wasn't reading the newspaper, but she was looking to see where the artists were moving to.
Huh.
And
that's a good point.
And just following the artists, and one of her best investments turned out, that's how she found it. Okay. And as far as investing in Florida, why I have chosen to stay out of Florida is because because we have a really good thing going in Dallas-Fort Worth. So why rock the boat? Why try and mess things up just for the sake of checking some other markets out. We diversify within submarkets of Dallas-Fort Worth, but I think there's a really good thing that's going to continue to happen in DFW for at least the next 5 years. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. Anything can happen, but the fundamentals are there for DFW. As far as Fort Worth, Nevada, Arizona, or Phoenix in particular, I know I'm grouping some states and some cities, so I'm about to make a generalization, and obviously not everything is applied to what I'm about to say for each of those three areas, Arizona, Florida, and Nevada. I mean, generally speaking, when the market corrects itself, those areas historically have been hit the hardest. And so we've got to really pay attention to the fundamentals of how you buy, and that ties back to a question that you ask later about what we look for in a property, and that is stabilized cash flowing properties. So that means they're at least 90% occupied and they have value add components to them, ideally built 1980 to 2000, somewhere around there. And that mitigates risk because we're not buying a distressed property that is older. We're buying a relatively newer property that is performing. We're buying a business that's currently making money, and we're simply enhancing the cash flow through those value add streams. So you can take that approach and apply it to those other states, but that's just generally why I'm focused on DFW.